Imagine waking up every single morning to 100 different voices begging you for a favor. Imagine that these voices aren't human. One is the frantic, high-pitched chirp of a mother swallow who lost her nest in the storm. Another is the low, rumbling groan of an old hunting hound with a thorn deep in his paw. Then comes the nervous, rapid-fire chatter of a squirrel desperately running from a hawk. For Princess Leora, this was not a bad dream. It was her everyday reality. Princess Leora of Eldoria was born with a legendary, magical gift. She could speak to every single animal in the kingdom. But by the time she reached her teenage years, the gift had become a heavy, suffocating curse. When she was younger, she tried her absolute best to help. She ordered the royal guards to rescue stranded kittens from high branches. She carried pouches of expensive seeds in her silk pockets for the hungry winter birds. But no matter what she did, it was never enough. The forest was simply too large, and the animals' problems were endless. "Princess, my babies are freezing," a rabbit would cry from the bushes. "Princess, the river is too fast today, I cannot cross," a young deer would complain. "Princess, the hunters are in the woods again." Eventually, the sheer weight of their impossible demands broke her spirit. She felt utterly exhausted. She stopped taking her afternoon walks in the beautiful royal gardens. She ordered the servants to close her bedroom windows tightly to block out the morning birdsong. She began to hate her magic, wishing with all her heart that she had never been born with it at all. Meanwhile, at the muddy edge of the castle grounds lived a poor stable boy named Hugo. Hugo possessed zero magic. If a horse whinnied, Hugo just heard a loud horse. He had absolutely no idea if the animal was saying, "I am exhausted from the ride," or "I would love a crunchy apple right now." But Hugo had something else: rough hands from hard work, a warm smile, and endless patience. Every morning, long before the sun peeked over the stone castle walls, Hugo was already in the stables. He hauled heavy wooden buckets of fresh, icy water from the well. He brushed the dried mud from the horses' coats until their fur shone like polished copper and midnight silk. And he talked to them constantly. "There you go, old boy," he would murmur in his ordinary, human voice. "I know it is a chilly morning, but this warm mash will set you right. We will get you warmed up in no time." The horses could not understand his human words, and he could not understand their animal language. But whenever Hugo walked down the center of the barn, the massive animals would lower their heavy heads and press their soft, velvety noses lovingly against his shoulder. One crisp autumn afternoon, the king asked Leora to go down and inspect the royal stables. Leora dreaded the trip. The royal stables housed over 50 horses. In her mind, that meant 50 loud, booming voices complaining about stiff leather saddles, cold drafts under the doors, and itchy wool blankets. She dragged her feet the entire way, pulling her thick winter cloak tightly around her ears, hoping the heavy fabric would muffle the noise. As she pushed open the massive wooden doors of the stable, she took a deep breath, squeezed her eyes shut, and braced herself for the overwhelming flood of demands. She waited for the headache to begin, but the barn was quiet. Well, it was not completely silent, but it was incredibly peaceful. There was only the gentle sound of chewing and deep, relaxed breathing. Leora slowly opened her eyes. The horses were calmly munching their golden hay. They were not shouting at her. They were not begging for royal decrees or complaining about the castle blacksmith. Instead, a massive black stallion named Midnight turned his elegant head toward Leora and spoke in a deep, rumbling voice. "He gave me an extra handful of sweet oats today. Midnight said, lazily swishing his dark tail. He knew my legs were tired from yesterday's ride. Leora blinked in absolute surprise. She looked around the quiet barn. Who? She asked aloud. The boy. A spotted mare chimed in from the very next stall. The boy with the soft hands and the quiet walk. He does not understand a single word we say. Princess, sometimes. We tell him the saddle pinches on the left side, and he checks the right side instead. But he keeps checking, and feeling, and adjusting until he finds the problem. He tries. A chorus of gentle, approving whinnies rippled through the long stable. We love the boy, an old gray pony whispered, his dark eyes following Hugo as the stable boy swept the dusty floor at the far end of the barn. He cannot hear our words, but he listens with his hands and his heart. He shows up for us, every single day, no matter what. And Leora stood completely frozen. She watched Hugo pause his sweeping just to scratch the old gray pony right behind the ears. Hugo smiled, said something soft and encouraging in human words, and happily went back to his chores. A profound, life-changing realization washed over the young princess. All her life, she had believed that because she possessed the magic of understanding. She was entirely responsible for solving every single problem perfectly. When she realized she could not fix everything, she got overwhelmed and chose to do nothing at all. She had locked herself away from the world. But Hugo understood absolutely nothing about their language. Yet, he did everything he could to make them comfortable. He did not need a magical gift to be kind. He did not need perfect comprehension to provide love and comfort. The tears Leora had been holding back for years finally fell down her cheeks. She wiped them away and walked over to Hugo, who looked up, startled to see the princess standing in the dusty hay. "Your Highness," he stammered, dropping his broom to bow quickly. "Please, Hugo," Leora said softly. She reached out and grabbed a spare wooden brush from a hook on the wall. "Show me how you brush them. I want to help." From that day forward, Princess Leora no longer hid in her quiet bedroom. She spent her afternoons down in the stables and out in the gardens, working right alongside Hugo. She stopped trying to be the magical savior of the entire animal kingdom. Instead, she used her amazing gift simply to translate, telling Hugo exactly where the saddle pinched, or which horse preferred sweet apples over crunchy carrots. Together, they made the perfect team. Understanding everything is not the same as caring enough to show up. Sometimes, the simplest, most ordinary kindness does far more good than the most powerful gift in the world.